And welcome back into the show. And before I get to my rapid reaction on second down regarding the NFL Week 1, as always, I want to take this opportunity, first and foremost, to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for this opportunity to host Smooth the Change. Secondly, thank you, the fans, for watching. YouTube, Fox 54, I appreciate the feedback. I see people in the streets of Columbus all the time who comment on the show, and I really appreciate you. You're a blessing. And last but not least, man, that production crew, I'm telling you, what these ladies and gentlemen do, I can't do. The fact that I can get to run my mouth on TV and talk about a show, they get to put it all together. So I truly appreciate the best production crew in the business. Thanks as always. All right, let's go ahead and get to it. It's time for second down. Man, it's the best time of the year right here. The NFL is officially here. Week 1 has come and gone. And we actually started week 2 already with the Thursday night game with the Bills and the Dolphins. But I've got a rapid reaction that I want to make, and I'm going to start with the Atlanta Falcons. And I want to show you something right here with my first point. Rather than the Atlanta Falcons, it's okay, I think, if we call them the false start Falcons, right? And this is not me picking on Falcons, nor am I picking on Falcons fans. This is me simply reiterating what transpired in the first game. So if your quarterback is about 61 or 62% completion percentage, throws a touchdown but throws 2 interceptions, if you're Atlanta, isn't this what you were trying to get away from? I'll repeat that. This is what everybody said Kirk Cousins would now alleviate. What would be removed? It would no longer be the story of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, trust me, I told you, and you know me if you've been watching this show, I'm not somebody who overreacts, because that's who Kirk Cousins is. Kirk Cousins can come back next week and go 20 of 27 for 300 yards and throw 2 touchdowns. That's just who he is. So if you're Atlanta, I want to look at why it transpired the way it transpired, because it looked as if they were trying to make Kirk Cousins something they were not. And in my estimation, I think when you're in a game where a team kicks field goals, 6 field goals, you should never abandon the run. Atlanta was never out of that game because Pittsburgh obviously couldn't pull away from them, but I think the Falcons weren't as direct as they should have been in terms of being a smash-mouth football team. Don't get the situation twisted. Just because you're paying a quarterback $181 million and $100 million guarantees doesn't mean he needs to be the hero. He needs to be an individual that can win you the game when you need him to and not lose you the game. He doesn't need to be the individual that you necessarily lean on because you've got one of the best offensive lines in football and you've got a running game and a dynamic runner in that in Bijan Robinson and not a bad backup in Algier. The Falcons don't need to look outside of who they are regarding their identity. It is not in Kirk Cousins. It is in your run game. If they remember that, I think they'll be fine. And even if they're not fine, they'll definitely be better than they were week 1. All right? Here's my next point regarding my rapid reaction in the NFL. Watson has to perform, a.k.a. he has to be better, a.k.a. he can't be what he was. Now, if you're missing your 2 starting tackles and you're missing an all-pro caliber running back in Nick Chubb, I think it would affect anybody. But I think he's deeper for Deshaun Watson. And this is what I want to say here. Because I'm somebody who, I stay away from a lot of things that people talk about because I understand that sometimes people go after low-hanging fruit. I don't operate that way. But what I will say is that if you think that Deshaun Watson only has football to worry about psychologically when it comes to his emotional state and his mental state, I just think you're wrong. I don't think there's any way that any human being of flesh like we are can go through what he's went through and gone through. Now, a lot of this brought on himself. This is not absolving him in any way. What I'm saying is that's something that has to play into the psyche of Deshaun Watson. And it feels as if when he walks into the stadium, those crowds that were cheering him at Clemson and even when he was drafted by the Texans don't seem to necessarily just be about Deshaun Watson and cheering him on. A lot of those are jeers now. And if he can't get it together, I don't care how much money you're paying him. If you're the Cleveland Browns, you saw what you did with 5 different quarterbacks last year. I'd have no problem going to Jameis Winston and seeing what he can give me. All right, next. The Giants need a new DJ. And I'm not talking about a guy who can spin records. I'm talking about a guy who can spin the football. Daniel Jones. I'm somebody who never likes the term reach when it comes to the NFL draft because I think it's an overused word and sometimes I think it's used wrong, in a wrong way. But Daniel Jones was an overreach. Not regarding the draft, he was an overreach in terms of extending him and thinking he was your franchise quarterback because you saw what he gave you the first 3 or so years and you knew he wasn't the guy. Even when they went to the playoffs, he had an average season, which was his best season. Oh, and the reason he had his best season was because Saquon Barkley, the guy whom you let walk and go to Philly, who scored 3 touchdowns in their opener against Green Bay, had his best year in New York. So that's what you get if you're the New York Giants. So now you need to try to get a better DJ, not necessarily another quarterback because you don't seem like you want that. You need a better version of Daniel Jones. And I don't know what it's going to take from Brian Daboll, but I guarantee you he's going to earn his stripes and earn his paycheck because Daniel Jones, this version of him, definitely isn't the answer in New York. All right, and lastly, I think Justin Fields may be fool's gold. So for all you Georgia fans, Ohio State fans who watched him in college, and all you Pittsburgh Steelers fans, I've got a whole bunch of homeboys that are big Steelers fans. My mother is one. Even though the Steelers won this game, you have to have some reservations about Justin Fields. It just doesn't look right. It doesn't look like the speed of the game has slowed down to him at all. And if you have to depend on scoring 18 points and TJ Watt being a beast, which he will be along with Hightower and those guys and Mika Fitzpatrick, I just don't think it's the answer. You may not think Russell Wilson is the answer in Pittsburgh, but I definitely don't think it's Justin Fields because his inability to read the game and his inability to make throws down the field consistently will hinder him. And I'm all about to do a threat quarterback. You know me. I love somebody who's versatile. But in this case, Justin Fields seems to lack the versatility because he's a run-only quarterback in my estimation. All right, when we get back from the break, it's my favorite segment of the show. It's my nonsense narrative. We'll be back with more right here on Move the Chains right after this. Hey, welcome back to the show. It's time for my favorite segment of the show. It's time for the nonsense narrative. Go ahead and give me the graphic here. Top 10 quarterbacks in terms of their production thus far this season. Because, see, a lot of people think that quarterbacks have to be explosive. That's the narrative. I think it's nonsense. And you know why? As I look at this list, and this also includes Josh Allen's performance Thursday night against the Dolphins, which was pristine. But do you know how many yards Josh Allen threw for? Go back and look. It was nowhere near 300. But you know why? Because it's not about explosiveness for quarterbacks nowadays. It's about efficiency. In week one, only Tua Tagovailoa and Matthew Stafford threw for 300 yards. And one was in a win in the Dolphins and one was in a loss in the Rams. So if you're a quarterback nowadays, defenses are trying to bait you to throw the ball down the field because they understand that if we can make you go on 13, 14, 15 play drives, the likelihood of you fumbling or throwing an interception increases and the likelihood of us giving up the big play decreases. It's what NFL defenses are doing now. So this narrative that quarterbacks have to throw for 350 is not it. It's their acumen, it's their accuracy, and it's their patience. That is what quarterbacks have to have when it comes to being successful and trying to lead your team to a Super Bowl. That's why I think being explosive for quarterbacks is a nonsense narrative, and you'll see that change. All right, when we come back from the break, it's the last segment of the show. It's the final drive. We'll be back and we'll move the chains right after this. And welcome back into the show. This is the last segment, so you know what that means. It's time for the final drive. Man, Todd Bowles is a phenomenal coach, and I don't think he gets his due. Do you remember when he was the head coach of the New York Jets? They weren't good. And a lot of people thought that was because Todd Bowles wasn't ready to be a head coach. Maybe he wasn't. But as he transitioned to become the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, first as a defensive coordinator under Bruce Arians, won a Super Bowl, and now has helped this team as a head coach and a defensive coordinator win the division multiple times with and without Tom Brady. Todd Bowles is a defensive-minded guy, but has been able, even with losing his offensive coordinator from last year and Dave Canales, who's now the head coach at the Panthers, in week one didn't miss a beat. A lot of people think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are just average. Keep thinking that because Todd Bowles is one of the most underrated coaches in the entire league. All right, you can not only catch Move the Chains right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54, but you can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's at Move_the_Change. Like it, subscribe, leave a comment. Anything that you say will be appreciated and used to better this show. All right, another banger for everybody in production. I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers, and as always, until next time here on Move the Chains, God bless.